Hi everyone, welcome to Azure SQL Database tutorial. I am Aurogya Das. In this tutorial, we will learn about an overview of Azure SQL Database, key concepts, create, connect, and query the database, and finally clean up the resources we created for this tutorial to avoid unnecessary costs. Now, let's go into the details. Azure SQL Database Overview. Azure SQL Database is a relational database as a service hosted in Azure Cloud that falls in the industry category of Platform as a Service. Let me give you a simple introduction about PaaS. Platform as a Service is a cloud computing model that provides infrastructure and a complete on-demand cloud platform such as hardware, software for developing, running and managing applications. In this context, no need to provision hardware, install or patch Azure SQL database, and Azure maintains the platform for us. Next, as a fully managed service, Azure SQL database handles automatically the database management functions such as upgrading, patching, backups, and monitoring without manual intervention. By default, Azure SQL Database is architected for scalability, high availability, or disaster recovery. As a multi-model database, it enables to store and work with data in multiple formats, relational data, as well as non-relational data such as graph, JSON, or XML documents, spatial data, and key value pairs. We can also use transact SQL for querying and analyzing both relational and non-relational data. Next, key concepts. To use Azure SQL database in cloud, we need to purchase it and it's available as vCore based and D2 based purchasing models. First, let's see about vCore based purchasing model. vCore stands for Virtual Core and it represents a logical CPU that enables us to choose the physical hardware configuration. In vCore based purchasing model, we can choose the number of vCores, the amount of memory, the storage size and speed. Next, service tiers. Let's see what's a service tier. Service tier categorizes the database based on the amount of workload required for applications, cost, low latency, resiliency, and so on. The vCore based purchasing model has three service tiers. First, the general purpose service tier. This service tier is designed for common or standard workloads and more economical for balanced compute and storage options. Second, the business critical service tier. It's designed for OLTP applications with high transaction rates and low latency I/O requirements. It offers the highest resilience to failures by using several isolated replicas. Thirdly, hyperscale service tier. It's designed for most of the business workloads. Hyperscale provides great flexibility and high performance with independently scalable compute and storage resources. Also, it's higher resilience to failures by setting more than one isolated database replica. Next, let's see what's a compute tier. The compute tier defines the way the compute resources such as CPU, memory are allocated and managed in the database. There are two compute tiers in the vCore based purchasing model. One is provisioned. In the provisioned compute tier, a specific or fixed amount of compute resources are continuously provisioned irrespective of the amount of workload activity. The cost is based on the amount of compute resources provisioned at a fixed price per hour and not on actually consumed capacity. Next, serverless compute tier. In this tier, the compute resources are auto-scaled based on demand or as per the required workload capacity. The cost is based on the amount of compute used per second. Next, DTU based purchasing model. DTU stands for Database Transaction Units and represents a blended measure of CPU, memory, database read and write capacity. The compute sizes can be changed with minimal downtime. Next, service tiers. There are two service tiers in DTU based purchasing model. One is standard service tier. It is designed for common workloads and offers budget oriented balanced compute and storage options. Next, the premium service tier. In this service tier, the database is designed for OLTP applications with high transaction rates, low latency IO requirements, and highest resilience to failures by using several isolated replicas. Next, compute tiers. For DTU based purchasing model, only provision compute tier is available and it is same as vCore based purchasing models provisioned compute tier. And next, Elastic Database Transaction Units or EDTUs. EDTU or Elastic Database Transaction Unit is a measurement used for the shared resources in an elastic pool, and we will learn about elastic pool in the next section, deployment models. Next, deployment models. A deployment model refers to how a database is deployed and managed in the Azure cloud. Azure SQL Database has two deployment models. One is single database and the other is elastic pool. In single database, each database is isolated from others and is portable. Each database has its own dedicated resources such as compute, memory, and storage and not shared with other databases in Azure. Elastic Pool is a collection of single databases with a shared set of resources such as CPU or memory, specially designed for multi-tenant applications or workloads with varying usages across databases. Next, the prerequisites for this tutorial. So, for this tutorial, you need to have an Azure account with valid subscription, a Microsoft Entra ID user for accessing the database with Microsoft Entra authentication, and we can test the database connection and query either through SSMS or Azure Data Studio. So it's your choice to test it in any one of them or both of them. For this, you need to have SSMS installed on your local computer, or next you need to have Azure Data Studio installed on your local computer. For the download links, please refer to the description. Next, Azure SQL Database creation, connection and query. So from Azure portal, we will create a single database. For the database operations, we will connect, create and query tables from SSMS or Azure Data Studio. Please refer to the SQL scripts provided in the description. Now, let's do the hands-on demo. I have signed into my Azure account. Now, let's create Azure SQL database from the portal. Since I have already created multiple times the database, the SQL database icon is shown here. So if you are doing it for the first time, it will not show you. So go to the search box and type SQL database. Once you type SQL, it will show this SQL database icon. Click this and click on this create button or this create SQL database button. Now, so as for this Azure SQL database, we have these free tier facilities available. So you can click apply offer to get an amount of usage freely. So I will click this apply offer and use for this tutorial. And you can also do it for your learning purpose. So next, select the resource group. If you don't have created one, then here enter the database name. So I have entered the database name. Next, we need to have the server. So click here to create a new server. And here enter the server name. So type the name, then select the location. Okay, I have selected the location. Next, we need to select the authentication method to connect to the database. So for this, I will be using the Microsoft Entra only authentication. So I have the Android user. For this, you need to set the Microsoft Entra admin. For this, click this set admin and it will take you to the Android users. So here I have my user here. Select this user whom you want to authenticate to connect to the database. So I will select my username and click the select. So now the Microsoft Entra ID user will be allowed to connect to this server. Once you have filled in this information, next click OK. So we have created the server. Next, we need to configure the database. So you can see this, it's a general purpose serverless tier. If you want to see more details about the databases, you can see here. So here, as this is a free tier, it will not cost any amount. So the number of week was used, maximum week was is 2, and if you increase, it may go for the cost for this free option. So we are allowed to have 2 core and maximum size of GB as 32 and so on. So click this apply. Next, go for this option. So I will leave all these options as default and go to the networking tab. Here, to connect to the database, I will use public endpoint. So select this public endpoint since we will be accessing the database from the internet from our local machine. Next, for all other services, so allow Azure services and resources to access the server, no. So for other things, I will leave as default. Next, go for the security tab and here, so I don't want to enable Microsoft Defender. All these things I will leave as default. Next, if you want to add any additional settings, you can select. So here also I will go for the default ones. Click tags. Next, click review and create. So here you can see the overview of the database information, the subscription and the networking, security and additional setting details. So now we have entered the database details. Now let's create the database by clicking the create button. So this may take a few minutes or seconds to create the database. So I will pause this video until the database deployment is completed. Yes, now the database deployment is completed. Let's go click this go to resource and see the database details. So we can see here the database server name and the database details. So to connect the database from our local machine, we need to configure the client IP address. So for this, click this configure button and set the required settings. So for this, in the public network access, click the selected networks and come down and click this add your client IPv4 address. And here, once you click this one, here you need to add the client IP address, the starting address and the ending address. So here for my machine, this is the address. So we need to put the starting and ending as the same address. So for you, if you don't know your public IP address, you can search in the Google and get your machine's public IP address. So I have entered, then click this save button and it will update the my public IP address so that I can access the database from my local machine. Okay, so we have updated the firewall rule. Now go to the database and try to connect it from the SQL editor. So click this one. Now in this Azure portal, we have a query editor to connect the database. So click this one and you can connect from the console. So as I have authorized my Microsoft Entra ID user to connect to the database, we can click this one continuous the Entra ID user to log into the database. Once you log in, it will display your database name here and the query window here, the tables. So nothing is there, views and stored procedure, nothing is there. Now I will run an SQL to create a table and see whether it works or not. So for this, I have a sample script, create table script. So input here and click this run button. So you can see that query succeeded and affected rows 0. So we can connect to the database in 3 ways. One is from the query editor itself, then SSMS, SQL Server Studio Management, SQL Server Management Studio, then Azure Data Studio. So for this tutorial, I will use all the 3 of them. Here in the query editor, I have created the table. Next, I will show you how to connect the SSMS and insert the data we have created in this table. Now, so click this. I have opened the SQL Server Management Studio. So we need to input the details, this database details to connect it. So here the server name, go to the database portal. Here in the overview, click the overview. Then you can find the server name here. So copy this one and input here the server name. Next, so for the authentication, as we have enabled the Microsoft Entra, so select this Microsoft Entra MFA. So we have various authentication methods. As we have enabled the Microsoft Entra, so select this Microsoft Entra MFA. And for the username, so we need to give the Entra ID username. So go to the Microsoft Entra ID, then click on this. So for example, go to Microsoft Entra, then click this users and select the user which one you added while creating the database. You authorized with the user, go to that user and you will find this user principal name. So copy this one and go to the SSMS login. and input here. Now click this. Other settings are okay. Now click this connect button. So once you input the click the connect button, it will ask for the authentication. So connect your user and it will say authentication complete. So you can return to the application. Now you can close this one and return to the SSMS. Here you can see that the SQL Server Management Studio is now connected to the Azure SQL database. If you click these databases, so you can see our database which we created from the portal. Now expand this and there should be the table customers which we created in the Azure SQL database query editor. So here you can see that DBO customers the table. So here select this one and go to this menu. Click this new query and we will insert a record in SSMS. So for this I have the insert script. So copy this one and run it here. So after entering this one, now click execute. So you can see that one row affected. So I will add another row and run this query. So we have added two records. Now let's select those records and see whether the data is inserted properly. Execute. So here we can see that the data are executed correctly. Now the customer ID. So I just wanted to tell about the script a little bit. So here customer ID has been declared as identity column. So this identity means it's a sequence column. So the customer ID will be generated automatically. That is, it's incremented each time a new record is inserted. Now let's go to Azure Data Studio and check if we can connect to the database and retrieve the data. So for this, click the Azure Data Studio, open the Azure Data Studio and click the new connection. So here the connection type, here we need to input the required details. So for this also the connection type will be here Microsoft SQL Server, and here the parameters, then input the server name same as the as we entered for the SSMS. So go to the SQL database, click the overview, then copy this server name and here input the server name, then authentication type. So here we need to select Microsoft Entra ID universal with MFA support as we have selected for the Microsoft Entra ID. So here it will display your account name automatically, or you can click the add account to add the account. So I have already added for your understanding, so I am adding it again. So click your account. Okay, so it says your account was added successfully. Now close this one and return to Azure Data Studio. So database, it should display here. Okay, so here we have created the IT SQL master DB as the database. Select the database, then other things leave it as a default. Click connect. So we have connected to the IT SQL master database, and you can see that the table has been created, which we created in the Azure SQL database query editor, and we inserted the data in the SSMS, and we can see the same table in the Azure Data Studio. Now let's click this new query and check the data in the database to confirm that we have connected successfully and created the records. So click this one and you can see the two records. Okay, so for example, I will insert another record. So I will put a 2 and I will put here 2 as the name. Now select this one and click run. Now let's say check whether the data is inserted correctly or not. So we can see that the 3 records are inserted automatically. As I said here, when we are inserting the values, you can see that for the customer ID, we are not inputting the value. So it is automatically populated and the next number will be incremented automatically. That is the identity keyword means. So as we have created the Azure SQL database and we have connected from the Azure portal through the query editor. Then we have tried and checked in the SSMS, and also we have tested the same in the Azure Data Studio. Next, to avoid, so as this is Azure SQL database has a free tier options, we can use it for certain period without any cost. But if you want to keep your database for some time, you need to, in order to avoid the request read capacity or write capacity, we need to disconnect from the Azure Data Studio and SSMS to avoid unnecessary read write requests. So click here disconnect and it will disconnect from the Azure SQL database. In the same way, you can go to SSMS and click this button to disconnect. So it will disconnect from the Azure SQL database. Now let's go to the Azure portal and delete the resources we created to avoid unnecessary costs. So finally, we have learned how to create an Azure SQL database, insert data, create table, insert data, and retrieve the data. That's all in this video. Now let's go to the Azure portal and click this resource group to delete the SQL database. So here select the database and the server, then click delete button. So it will ask for the delete, enter the delete keyword, then click delete and click here. It will start deleting the 2 resources. So this may take a few seconds or minutes to delete the server and the database. So that's all in this tutorial. Thank you very much for your patience and time to learn about Azure SQL database. Finally, a humble request, please like, subscribe and share to your friends if you found this video useful. Once again, thank you very much and see you in the next video.